Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.
All right, we've got Pastor Richards on the line with us. Good morning, Pastor.
Hey, good morning, Daniel.
How are you?
A little bit disturbed. I listened to the major topic that you guys were discussing this morning. That's always a very disturbing topic for me. Those who follow my work, the body of my work, know that a large percentage of it, obviously I do a lot of counseling, a lot. Predominantly, women would come in for counseling rather than men, even in relationship counseling. So I do a lot of counseling, and through counseling I get a front seat view to a lot of the abuses that women in general go through, be it emotional abuse or financial abuse, psychological, physical and sexual abuse. I'm having been doing this for so many years. I don't know when it really clicked with me, but that's a long time ago. And whether I'm on TV or I'm on radio, even when I do lectures and stuff like this, it gets deep into my lecture material, and these are issues that I take very seriously and have been engaging in for a very, very, very long time. So you could understand why any reminders, not that I really needed another jolt, but any reminders of this kind would be disturbing to me. And not only to me, to be quite honest with you, but because of the statistics that I'm aware of, the prevalence of molestation of female. One startling statistic in places where statistics are well kept, I don't know so much about St. Vincent, but elsewhere, that over 50% of the women, in fact, in this particular country, it was closer to 70% of the women, but I'm not going to claim that necessarily for St. Vincent, but basically in every group of female you see anywhere, 1 out of every 2 of them, if you see 10, 5 of them have been in some way, shape, or form molested. That's a startling statistic.
It is.
Startling statistic.
Pastor, sorry, just...
Go right ahead.
I want to ask you this question because I think maybe you would be one of the better persons to shed some light on it.
Okay, if I can, I will.
Okay. Why is it that some persons are so quick to lay judgment and ridicule persons who come forward and say, I am a victim and this is my story?
I'm careful with the use of the word victim because even those who go through issues of sexual molestation, really that term victim is even a scar on them.
Okay.
But I have to use the term professionally because there's a body of study that is victimology of sexual molestation, and it is what it is. But it is not necessarily that I'm casting aspersion when I use the term victim. So I understand your question. Now, listeners, Daniel asked a very important question there that I will have to discuss because that is part and parcel of our problem. How the quote-unquote victims, individuals who have been sexually molested, are treated. But what triggers this for me is the particular video that has been circulated of late here. And I am going to use that as a trigger, but I cannot and will not use that to be the specific individual matter that I will address for obvious reasons. Please understand that I will not necessarily be commenting on the merits of the case related to that particular issue of the most recent video of the young lady who is accusing her father of raping her.
And that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
But I still don't lose any of the point because this is a reality. It is a thing that happens. Whether you want to totally dismiss or accept the veracity of what the young lady is saying on her video, I mean, whether or not you've seen the video, you haven't seen the video, it does not at all affect the reality that this is something that happens. Girls are raped by their fathers in St. Vincent. And I have said before that sexual crime is the worst of all crimes. And from a psychological point of view, I know why I say that. Sexual crime is actually, rape is actually worse than murder. It is worse than murder because the cruelty of rape is that the victim remains alive to be tortured over and over and over and over again, not by the physical act, but by the traumatic disorder that is consequent upon the act. And again, people in counseling can attest to what victims go through when it's a dastardly, I cannot begin to, and which is why I am very emotional if it comes to whether it's women are marching and people are slighting it and they say things and cast aspersion, or whether women are protesting. And most of the times the people who cry out against these things are basically women. Men don't even fight other men on this. And I guess because they know who they are, I don't know. Men don't fight men. Men don't come out to protect women on this. Men don't come out to call out other men. Daniel, you need to listen. Men don't really. I mean, there are a few that do, but I have been in a number of protests in Kingston, and to basically call out and to bring attention to and action towards these matters in our country. And 90% of the people who come out and march are women, and make the cry. They are women. The men will look out from their office windows and smirk or just watch in curiosity, but they will not stand up. And sometimes people say they know why the men are not doing this. But this whole matter, Daniel, of these sexual crimes are just wicked. Pedophilia, incest, and then rape. And in the particular case that, just surfaced in the video, it's a combination of all three. It's a child, pedophilia, it's incest, family, and it's rape without consent. So it's like double whammy. Wickedness. I mean, one alone is a killer. All three. And look, those who want to deny this is happening in St. Vincent, I don't know which rock you have your head under. I don't mean, again, I don't speak, I don't want to really speak in a kind of way, but I don't want to insult people, Daniel. But here's the question then that we come to today. Here's the question. Mm-hmm. Because I am outraged and others are outraged. And we have been here before. We have been here before, outraged. But here's the question. Beyond outrage, because outrage has its place, as I'm visibly upset trying to keep myself calm and lucid. And
I understand it. I understand it.
But I'm trying to calm. But okay, so outrage. But outrage is some energy that. But to what extent will the outrage produce change? And I think what is more consequential and what is more foundational that ought to happen here in St. Vincent is change, not just outrage. Change, not just radio talk. Change. And then when we get to this, so we have to calmly now cool down and talk about, beyond the outrage, how can we effect change in St. Vincent? Now, Daniel, again, I'm aware that there are two approaches to these matters. And you all bear with me, all right? Because from the outrage side, I could get really emotional, very passionate, and I can vent. From this approach as to what can be done, I want to remain calm, and I want you to put your outrage in abeyance for a little bit. Just hold it for a while and try to think this through. There are really two approaches when you get beyond the outrage to change this. Either from the angle of prevention. What can be done to prevent this dastardly crime from happening? So you can walk from that angle, making sure that it doesn't happen in the first place, preventing it in the first place. Or you can walk from a second angle, which is the second alternative approach, from the angle of how can society deal with offenders. What would be the severity of the repercussion, which is not necessarily the desirable angle. Say what you want. You don't want the most effective punishment in place and repercussion in place and lose your job and be shamed publicly and all of that. Because even when all of that is done, the victim is still there. The crime has been committed. I don't know if you're getting me, right? I know people say, well, castrate them, lock them up for life, throw away the key, let them lose their job, let them, be beaten publicly and all kind of things. People say these things are from the angle of correction or severity of repercussion, and severity of repercussion does not repress. Or some people argue that with respect to the severity, it serves notice, and down the road, it will bring a repression in the actual occurrence. But the most ideal is prevention. It's basically like any disease that ravages your body. You don't want necessarily the best course of action to be, well, let's come up with a cure once it starts ravaging your body. You want, let's see how we can prevent this thing so that it doesn't start ravaging your body. So those are the two approaches that can be taken if we're going to address this in civil and grenadines, right? And you ask me, right? Why is it therefore this thing happens year after year after year, time after time after time? Why can't there be, despite all of our outrage, why can't there be a dent in this particular matter? And I tell you why. Because there are serious issues, Daniel, related to either of these approaches from the angle of prevention. All right? First of all, you have to identify who are these sick men and women. There are some sick men and women in society. Some of them love, Daniel, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but some of them love young flesh. And because they love young flesh, they have no problems whatsoever with the age of consent being ridiculously low. Follow me on this, Daniel. Follow me. You think I am comfortable with the age of consent being this minor, a teenager? At 15 years of age, you're living in your parents' house. You don't have a job. But you can give consent for your body to be used in this way. I have actually commented on the fact that it is convenient for a lot of people who love young flesh. I know what I'm saying from a psychological point of view. There's a morbidity. There's a psychological morbidity. A psychological dysfunction. I might even get into it just now. There's a psychological dysfunction for some men, particularly pedophiles, but others who, even when it is not a minor up to 11 years of age or is somebody between 11 and 15, they still love young flesh. And anything within the society that accommodates this craving for the young flesh, they're all for it. They will never get in a protest, for example, to say, raise the age. You watch and see. If we were to have a movement, raise the age for consent for our girls to, let's say, 20 or 9, they will never. Because a bunch of them might probably get locked up. So they don't want this. They want young flesh legally. So from the angle of prevention, there's some sick people with some morbidity, psychological morbidities. Either whether it's a biological disorder, because part of it can be biological apart from psychological. Mm-hmm. There are the people who do this to girls, children, Your own child, people who do this are sick, bad. If we are working this from the angle of prevention. And courses of studies, a lot of studies are there that show that it might be because of biological factors, that they have brain abnormalities. Maybe they fell on their head when they were young. In fact, they're thinking some of them have really neuropsychological factors that affected their development since when they were children, which is part of why the way of dealing with these is psychodynamic counseling, which I don't want to get into, but those who have had neuropsychological correlates, some of them because of their hormonal imbalance, their hormonal level, testosterone, serotonin, or dopamine, all of these different things, because chemically, depending on the imbalance of these chemicals, testosterone, for example, shoot into your brain, it will cause you to react and behave differently to someone who has a regular, level, testosterone level or serotonin level. So yes, I know that there are biological factors, but they're sick, and you have to identify. Some people use a penile plethysmograph, which is a very embarrassing thing. A penile plethysmograph, which no man will subject himself to here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Basically, you allow this measurement to be put around your penis, and flash images are flashed across a screen, and your penis is hooked up to a machine, and it's measured, and as the images flash across the screen, whether it is a young girl, a prostitute, somebody being choked, various things, Daniel. I'm just talking to you about these things. Even animals, you run some animals across the screen. Something, triggers you sexually, and the penile plethysmograph not going to lie. It is going to show that measurement. And if it's a dog that excites you, it's going to be seen. If it is choking somebody, if it is some kind of S&D that it's going to be seen. Then am I running out of time here or something? I have so much.
Sorry, Pastor. Do they do that here?
No, Daniel. That's my issue. I said that there are issues related to the two approaches. The two approaches are either from the angle of prevention or from the angle of repercussions. What do? I'm just taking this from the angle of prevention. But in order to prevent it, you have to prevent it, you have to know who is sick before they do it. I think that's the point I'm driving at. So it is a matter of identification of the target men, the men who have this tendency, the men who either because of their biological functioning, their psychodynamic functioning, their neuropsychological correlates, they are prone to doing this. But the thing is, it remains under the closet. We only know after it happens the first time. That's when you know. But outside of that, there are some other sick men, outside of the biological factor. If you want to figure out how to handle these things at the prevention end, then you have to root out these men who are sick and prone to do this, not just biologically, but they're also sick with respect to their mind. They have no regard. It's a social disorder, a social pathology, a psychological pathology also, that they have no regard whatsoever for right or wrong. And not just in sexual matters, but in other matters, the exploitation of others is what brings them pleasure. They take advantage, they use their power to exploit others. They're callous towards others, they lack empathy. And they can't control emotion, it's a psychological thing. But then, so there are a lot of time bombs walking around. You don't know when they're going to grab the next girl or whatever, because they're sick. So the real issue, therefore, with solving this thing, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you're either going to solve it from, the angle of prevention or the angle of repercussion. And all I'm saying is here, from the angle of prevention, how are you going to do this if we are not in a culture and in a society that has, the access to the resources and ways and means of identifying these sick men and women who can prey on the children at any time. I can go on for a day on the issues related to the angle of prevention, but in the time that I have, just a couple of minutes, I want to look at the issues related to the other angle. The point that I'm trying to make here, given all of the outrage, why isn't a dent being made in the occurrence of this thing in St. Vincent? And I said, one, you could have problems from the issue of prevention. But worse than that, you have real issues from the angle of repercussions and punishment. And I say that because the matter of punishment, Daniel, punishment and consequences, that matter cannot be discussed in isolation from the matter of power and powerlessness. I have seen cultures in which, for example, I follow some of my football, football stars in the U.S. Not soccer, but the other American football. And in no time, you molest a woman, you hit a woman. Some report, I mean, it is almost, especially after Me Too, you are considered guilty until proven innocent, and like they take no prisoners. Bill Cosby, the Hollywood mogul, and people have been falling like bowling pins because apparently there's less tolerance in that culture for this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter how powerful you are. University athletic director Eddies have lost their jobs. Running backs on one of my favorite teams gone. Because no matter your power and position, you are not above the law when it comes to the matter of men and women. So in certain societies, the matter of punishment and consequence can be executed with far more efficiency. You have to ask yourself, again, remember what I'm saying, punishment and consequence are functions of power or powerlessness. And I have seen here instances where, we just had a recent example 2 years ago. A young lady this was probably the most famous case ever here in St. Vincent, which probably right now is still in abeyance. I don't know. She surfaced the other day with a video that went viral. But a young lady here in St. Vincent, the matter in which that was handled begged the question of power versus powerlessness. And typically, the power seems to fall off to the benefit of the man, the male, and the powerlessness typically on the female. The men either have political power, position power, money power, resource power, connection power. I can go on and on. Every form of meaningful power the men have. And because the balance of power is shifted towards men in this particular issue, as with many other things, because the balance of power is shifted towards men, it favors men in our jurisdiction and in our setting. Men get away. So you could talk punishment and consequence all you want. Punishment and consequence, these are functions of power and powerlessness. And you can't have punishment and consequence unless you change the power structure. And the balance there related to powerlessness, and particularly the fact that the men are powerful and the women are powerless, predominantly. And because men are powerful by the various levels of power, and because the women are powerless, it changes the outcome. The outcome, whether a man is punished, a man, there are consequences, this is determined by the fact that, well, he's male and they have the power. They have the connection power, resource power, intellectual power, money power, every kind of power. And therefore, the victimology of this thing, women are hurt in so many ways, it drives me nuts to think about it. Let me just say this in closing. Gosh, man. Look, especially in this particular matter, men who are molesting their children, you are the worst of the worst of the worst. And it's hard for me to say that knowing that Genesis 1:27-28 says, man was made in the image of God. But I am telling you without reserve that you are the worst of the worst of the worst. When Jesus was talking about his love for children and all of that, he said, you see something? Any man, anyone who causes one of these little ones to suffer is better that a millstone, and this is Jesus saying this, is better that a millstone be hung around his neck and we just take him and just drop him in the deepest part of the sea. That is passion coming from Jesus. For Jesus to say that, it means like, boy, you're the worst thing if you mess with children.
That's true.
Thanks for letting me vent a little bit. I still ain't feel better. But
I know. I understand. Pastor, I'm right there with you.
All right, take care. All right, bye.
All right, have a great day.
Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.